Welcome to Ear Biscuits, I'm Link.
And I'm Brett. This week at the round table of dim lighting, we are going to be answering your questions.
Lots of good questions. I predict that we're gonna spend most of our time talking about marriage. We'll get into marriage a lot. And I just wanna get into the first one.
Oh, I mean,
let's not even delay.
That just feels so abrupt. I mean, that made me feel anxious and uncomfortable.
Oh my goodness, they're answering the question already.
I feel like you gotta just ease in, like how are you? How you doing? I mean, like
you don't wanna know how I'm doing.
I mean, like we're here, we're at the studio, you know, it feels good to be able to get out of the house and just come to a place where there's no one I'm related to directly, you know what I'm saying? You know, no one who's in my immediate family. They're all at another place. They're at the house that I was just at, that I shall return to happily.
Listen, I hope to be upbeat, and I'm not going into negative or complaining mode, but
certainly seemed like it.
The world, you know, I don't know what to say. I really don't. I mean,
and I can tell you
personally,
you didn't know what to say. That's why you were like, literally I looked and we were 30 seconds in, you were like, let's get to the first question.
Yeah, because like.
If that's any indication of just how you feel right now.
I'm overwhelmed, man. I mean, do you want to talk about how we feel? I mean, the last thing I want is to start complaining about something associated with my life at this point.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
I'm not asking you
for longer than a few seconds. I'm just, you know, everything that's happening in the world and everything that between what my personal life and what's happening publicly, I mean, there's just a lot going on.
Listen, it's like, all you have to do, here's all you have to do.
It's so overwhelming.
All you have to do when somebody looks at you and says, what's wrong? You just say 2020. That's everybody gets it, man. Just say 2020.
But I don't even want to say, it's not that everything's wrong. There's a lot that's right that's happening. It's just, it's positive and overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's constant. And it should be. You know, I'm not complaining that that every morning there's a new detail to grapple with in the news and figure out how I personally am gonna respond to that. And then if we start to talk about how we as companies or as leaders of a company are gonna respond, again, I am not complaining. I am just acknowledging the fact that it is so complicated and overwhelming and necessary, and it, you know, I'm not wishing for these issues to go away. I'm wishing for coronavirus to go away.
Well, yeah,
you know,
that's kind of what I was getting at when I was talking about getting out of the house. I was like, I think that there's this, the thing that we've been talking about is, boy, it would be one thing for humanity to be, humanity addressing one major issue it's difficult enough for humanity to do that. When you throw multiple issues at humanity, which is what 2020 has decided to do.
So let's really dig in on systemic racism in America, and you know, yes, that's the right thing to do, and I'm not trying to escape from that constantly. I'm trying to find ways, and we are constantly talking about ways that we can properly be engaged.
You just made it sound like that's what we were about to dig into. Just to clarify, that's not what we're gonna do.
No, it wasn't.
We're gonna be answering your questions.
But no matter what you put out, there's an elephant in the room that matters more than other things, that matters the most right now. Black lives matter more than what we're gonna talk about on the show today.
Even to the point where making a decision to talk about anything that's like lighthearted or funny.
It feels weird.
It just feels weird.
It feels weird. I mean, it's like, yeah, and everybody's got stuff they're going through personally too, and everybody's got their, their own shit they're dealing with, and then you're right. 2020 is a doozy, but I just don't want to come across as complaining about it because it's such an important movement, and now is the time. And we all need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves and we're having space.
Well, I think
but when we come to these microphones and then it's just like, it's tough to know, especially when it's like, do you feel like everything can be scrutinized or criticized when you say something into a microphone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think that's the temptation. The temptation, especially for white people who have the privilege to just check out of the conversation if they want to, if they conclude that there's nothing personal at stake. They can be like, can we just move on? Can we just talk about something else? And I think your point is like, no, we're not moving on, and we're not moving on until real change has taken place. That's why my rec again today, which when we get to it will be directly related to this stuff. And if you feel that as a white person, you feel that fatigue setting in, that like, I gotta think about this, and I was just trying to figure out how to argue with my uncle about coronavirus, and now I gotta argue with him about It's like, yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, for better or for worse, yeah, and I do think for better, as what you were getting at, is like we got to keep talking about it, because it's just not something where there was this movement and everybody got excited and put stuff on Instagram, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we good now? No, we're not good. That's the point.
Yeah,
we're not good. It isn't good.
But how do we transition to having this Ear Biscuit be about something else for a second? And I don't, I just say, I don't want to defend that decision. I just want to have a conversation.
Well, I think the question itself will demonstrate the awkwardness of the transition. So without further ado, why don't you just ask the first question?
See, we could have already been halfway through this, but I think
that was good.
I'm glad. I'm glad that we didn't.
Now ask this question.
Praise Sharp. By the way, shout out to Praise Sharp. She was the solver of the riddles that in the Mythical Society that led to uncovering the fact that we were doing a live broadcast of a screening of me watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And all the clues were wrapped up in that stereoscopic viewer, which featured movies from the 80s I'd never seen.
But wasn't there like a
There were a number of steps, and
but there was one still frame on GMM, right?
Yeah, there was a clue on GMM that tied back to the stereoscopic viewer, and there were a number of layers, and we could watch it happen in the Discord when it was being solved.
That's the kind of stuff that's happening in the Mythical Society.
Way to go, Praise. You figured it out.
Solving mysteries.
Your question, how old were you when you had your first celebrity crush? Who was it? # Ear Biscuits. I didn't have like an immediate answer to this. I really had to think about it. The first person I thought about was Daisy Duke from the Dukes of Hazzard.
Okay, well.
But I mean,
she's a controversial choice.
Yeah, well, as a kid, I watched that show, and she wore what became to be known as Daisy Dukes.
Right.
But all I remember feeling was just weird and tingly, and I didn't really understand or want to come to grips with anything that was happening, and that was not a pun. Come to grips with what was happening.
How old are you talking about?
I mean, that's pretty young, right? I don't know what years, but I think my first real crush that I remember is Vicky, the robot featured in the television show Small Wonder.
The girl who played the lead.
Yeah, the robot.
The robot.
You watched the show, right? I mean, it started in 1985.
Yeah,
I went to like 1989.
I didn't watch it religiously.
I watched it as a religion. I worshipped her as a celebrity crush because she was a robot. No, I don't know. I was like, oh, she's cute and she's kind of robotic. It's kind of cool. I remember being embarrassed that someone would find out that I had a crush on a robot girl. And it was, I'm trying to, but I read a little bit about the story.
Understood that she was an actor.
Well, yeah, I knew it was an actress, but like.
So it wouldn't have been weird to have a crush on the actor who was playing her.
I had a crush on the robot. I had a crush on the character. I liked how she acted like.
You wanted a robot girlfriend.
Yeah.
Which that is not a good thing.
No, it's
not.
No,
I'm not saying if you have a robot girlfriend or if you've got one of those real dolls, I'm not saying that that's wrong. But what I'm getting at is if you wanted a woman that you could program and control, then that's in place of an actual woman, that could get problematic. That could reveal some bad tendencies about yourself, which was the point of that Robot Girlfriend song.
Yeah.
It was a guy who wanted to turn her on and turn her off when he wanted to.
I just thought she was cute, man. I thought it was cute how
There's definitely more going on than that though, now that you've talked about it.
Okay, there's something in there. Her dad was like a technological advanced electronics guy, and like he made her, and then he made her as a robot and then didn't tell anybody. So as a family, you know, they had a flesh and blood son. They had Vicky, the robotic daughter.
Her name was Vicky, huh? I couldn't have told you
that. It stood for something, VICCI.
Virtual? No.
Very ingenuitive, cute.
Ventriloquist.
But they kept it a secret that she wasn't a human.
Yeah, hence the whole point of the show, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of tension there.
Yeah. I don't remember, the first crushes that I remember were just girls that I went to school with. Like, you know, and I remember like being in first grade and having crushes on girls.
You picked tall girls, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then when you started dating short girls.
Right, yeah.
You never dated a tall girl. Well, there was that one girl in college that was kind of tall that you wanted to date.
Yeah, but she didn't date me.
No, she didn't want to date you. I didn't mean to bring it up, but did she tell you? I don't want to date you?
No, I never told her that I wanted to date her.
I thought you wrote her a letter or something. I thought you made a play. I like you, check yes or no.
Well, I definitely would not have done that specifically. No, it never became a thing. It never became a thing.
Well, she was as close as you got to dating a tall girl.
Right, but I mean, in first grade, having a crush on Lisa, who was in second grade, who was, boy, was she, I mean, she was so tall. And I just think that was coincidence. Really, she was the only tall girl that I had a crush on growing up. I mean, name another.
Well, I mean, the girl, I'm trying not to name names anymore because of.
Well, you have a tendency to name first and last names. You don't have to name.
The girl who would always have dreams about flying to her house. And
she wasn't tall.
She was tall.
No, she wasn't.
She was taller. She wasn't short.
5'4" maybe.
Wow.
As an adult.
No, she's taller than that.
5'5" max.
Oh,
100%.
I remember her being tall.
5'4".
Maybe I just watched her in your dreams.
Your memory is flawed. But what I'm saying
celebrity
is celebrity crushes. I remember, and I had to look her name up because as soon as I read this question, celebrity crush, there was a model that I remember really, really liking in the 80s as I was sort of becoming, you know, myself. You know, and because I guess in 1987, you know, I'm 10 years old. And like I said, I was already liking girls before that. But the closer and closer I got to like 12, the stronger and stronger these urges got. Christy Turlington.
She's still around.
Well, yeah, she's not dead. Yeah, is that what you mean?
I think she might still model.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure she does in some capacity.
I remember Christy Turlington.
But she's like one of those classic supermodels of the 80s that like alongside Cindy Crawford, etc.
Yeah.
You know, but I just remember seeing her as a boy and just thinking, wow, She's very pretty.
I mean, I thought those things too, but it didn't transfer into a crush because I could never date a supermodel.
Well, I would go like,
and I would stop
I feel
like
at the
to
magazine
me that was a
section.
disconnect.
I would stop at the magazine section at the grocery store, and because she was on a bunch of covers, right? I would go to that section where there was beautiful women on the covers of magazines. I'm not talking about the porn section because that's not in the grocery store. I'm not talking about like jugs. I'm talking about like Vogue.
Yeah.
You know, there'd be the
we already knew that.
Beautiful woman on the cover, and I would just stare.
You wouldn't pull the magazine down and thumb through it?
Well, because I think it's important to understand that, you know, and this is the case in most places, but like you didn't walk around Bowie's Creek and find a woman that looked like that. Like that does what, you know, we weren't in Los Angeles or whatever. You know, it's like this was this something that you're like, does this really exist? And of course now we know, technically no, it doesn't exist because It's been manipulated. This lighting is perfect. She's got on this makeup in exactly the right way.
I'm trying to figure out, and I think I know the answer, what's more problematic? You being enamored by this airbrushed woman, or me being enamored by a robotic girl?
Well, I think what I'm discovering right now is that, and I think it's one of the reasons that, and this is not the point that I was trying to make, and I'm not trying to make a woke point. That's not my intention. But I do think it's interesting that just as this young boy walking through the grocery store while your mom's picking out Vienna sausages, you're sitting there with your little Vienna sausage in the magazine section, staring at these manufactured beautiful women like Christy Turlington, and just thinking that I remember thinking things like, this is why I exist. It's like, wow. I just remember thinking that like, this is what I'm here for.
Yeah.
To find that. And that is just not a good thing to be thinking, right? To think that some manipulated.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Why is your watch talking? Your watch is trying to give you some advice here.
Wow, why would Siri be asking me if I was asking her? I said something that sounds like Siri, but now I'm going to put her to sleep. Sorry, this is like putting Vicky to sleep.
They did that.
You know, I just said, Vicky, do not disturb me. And so she will never interrupt us again until I turn it back on. I don't know what my point was. My point was that it probably wasn't a healthy thing, but I specifically remember when I saw her on TV, because she was in a bunch of commercials, she was in a bunch of ads. I mean, and I didn't know her name. I had to look her name up, and I didn't know her name at the time. Mm-hmm. It's like, that girl, yeah, that's what I'm about.
Yeah, you were, I wouldn't call it an obsession, but I mean, we interacted with the female form differently.
Expand, please.
I'm just saying, I didn't gawk at the magazines. Like I was too embarrassed to do that. I was embarrassed that I liked Vicky. Like I would like
you weren't.
No one.
In other words,
want anyone to know.
And not to get graphic, I'm just being honest here. In other words, when you as a young boy looked at Vicky, you didn't think, boy, I wonder what that robot looks like under her clothes, right? And I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that I was thinking. When I saw the ad, I was like, okay, what else is there? That's how I'm wired.
Yeah. It's interesting that I had shame in just having a crush on Vicky. I wouldn't have wanted anyone to know, and I would have denied it.
I don't think, I didn't tell you, the girls that I had a crush on, not until like probably middle school. At that point, I was pretty open about it.
The girls that, like in school that I had a crush on, like I didn't want anyone to know that. And I remember when-
Including them.
Yeah, and even in like middle school when people started pairing up and like, oh, she's my girlfriend, we're going together. Like I was really nervous that when I got a girlfriend, like my family was gonna find out. It's such a weird thing. I remember just being so nervous that they would be like, oh, do you You've got a girlfriend? What's her name?
You weren't scared of them finding out. You were scared of having to talk about it.
It was like revealing a part of myself, and it's like I felt like they would know something about me that I didn't want them to know. That I had a girlfriend, that I liked a girl, that I wanted to hold a girl's hand or kiss a girl.
I didn't want to talk to my parents,
But I was embarrassed that they would know. Well, like, do you have a girlfriend?
Well, I think that is normal. I think that the idea, let's say every time I want to talk to either one of my boys about girls, immediate embarrassment, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's totally normal. I think it would be a little bit odd if they weren't somewhat embarrassed about it, right?
I remember being at a baseball game, and it was when I was dating Amber, and we were watching the baseball game. You were one of the players. And your mom was there. And I remember—
You were one of the players.
I remember—
You say that like it's some accomplishment.
Holding—
They cut no one from the team.
Yeah. I didn't apply for the team. I didn't care for it.
Yeah, because you misunderstood. It wasn't an application. It was just showing up. You're like, where's the application? I can't be on this team.
I learned enough about baseball to know that I needed to be in the stands. Holding hands with my girlfriend. I'm sure Amber held my hand. I didn't hold her hand.
You talking about middle school baseball?
Yeah. When I dated Amber.
Okay.
And your mom—
7th grade.
Your mom was sitting there in the bleachers, and I'm sitting there, and Amber's holding my hand, and I just felt so embarrassed that your mom was gonna see me holding hands with my girlfriend.
I get that.
Yeah, I guess that's normal.
I think that, and I know that sometimes you feel like you need to check how
weird
you were, because you have said some things that are like, okay, yeah, that's different.
But that's
unusual. That's not.
I never looked at girls on a magazine cover and thought, man, I just want to keep thinking about her. I just felt like, that's a woman.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm a boy. That's a woman.
That's right. Like, that's what I was thinking. That is a woman. That's what I was tithinking. I was like, why doesn't she live in Bowie's Creek?
I'm just gonna stay away from the hole that you're digging for yourself.
All I've done is I've been honest about the fact that as far back as I can remember, when I saw a beautiful woman, I was very attracted to them.
You know what might make this better? Asking another question, which we'll answer after the break. Beep Boop 2488 says, let's talk marriage.
Okay.
So will this smooth things over if we talk about our long-standing love affair with our wives?
My wife is not threatened by the things that I thought as a 8-year-old in the grocery store. I didn't know her at the time.
I'm not talking about our wives listening. I'm talking about everyone else listening, and how like our interactions with females can be appropriate and mutually edifying.
Yeah.
And it not be based on some farce or your own needs or mine of a robot.
Just to clarify though, we've talked about a woman on a television show and a woman in a magazine.
I'm very skittish.
Those are not interactions.
I know.
Right.
When you talk about women in a magazine now, and like self-image and the female form and stuff like that, I'm starting to get nervous.
I understand.
Let's talk marriage. I've been with my husband since I was 19. Now she doesn't say how old she is. She could be 20. But let's assume it's longer than that. Let's talk about how crazy it is to grow up together, become adults together, become parents together, keep the spark alive, and not kill each other in the process. Yes, let's talk about that.
That is the goal. But first, we're going to, what are we doing today?
We just want to urge you to go to mythical.com and just scroll around. Just scroll around. You'll find stuff that you didn't know we were selling. That happens to me when I go there. And I'm like, yeah, that's great.
That happens to me.
Rep Mythical, rep your boys. There's something about merch that you can feel connected to us. We crafted something, we mailed it to you, you're wearing it, or you're using it, or you're spraying it, or you're putting it through your hair or on your lips. And it's a connection. Connect to us.
Wow, okay.
By buying our stuff.
That's an interesting perspective. I mean, I don't disagree with it, but I was just gonna say it's cool clothes.
You watch the show, but then it's like you can wear the ethos.
That's also true. I like that. Mythical.com. Okay, again, the question is talking about growing up together when you got married young, I mean at 19, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So my wife had just turned, I don't want to get this wrong. I think she just turned 20. She had turned 20.
Don't look at me.
She had turned 20 in December 1999, and then we got married in June 2001. I was like 20, I guess I was 23 at the time. Well,
I was 21. I turned 22 on our honeymoon.
Yeah, because I'm
and you
like
got married
half a year older than you and got married a year after you. So there's like yeah.
We've been, Christy and I've been married 20 years.
Right.
And you've been married 19 years.
I've been married as long as this woman lived before she got married.
And I think maybe she has too. Because that's kind of wrapped up in her question. She's been through a lot.
Well, this made me think about, we did talk about this a little bit in the Lost Years podcast, just the idea of growing up together. And you know, the thing about getting married young is you haven't become the adult that you're going to be, right? And there's still at 19, at 20, at early 20s, there's still a lot of change. I mean, there's a lot of change at any point in your life, but especially at that time, like you haven't lived alone, like you haven't been an adult with responsibilities, and all of a sudden you're two adults with responsibilities, figuring life out together. A lot of people who get married at that age get divorced because once they kind of figure out
who they are,
they're like, oh, this is not gonna work. But a lot of people, if you're blessed, as we have been, to kind of be able to grow up together, and as you learn and as you grow, it enhances the connection, which is, I think, what has happened. But the thing that this made me think of is something that Jesse and I have started doing, which is, I don't remember why we started. I know that she had been watching the first season or the last season, I don't know how many seasons there have been, of this Married at First Sight.
I have not heard of this.
I
don't know, a reality competition show?
It's not a competition. I don't know if it's a Netflix original or if it's just on Netflix now. We watch it on Netflix. And we just started whatever the latest season 2, I don't know. So at first I was just like, me and her like to watch we like to watch trashy reality TV together and laugh at it. Mm-hmm. Like we watched The Bachelor together. We even watched that Bachelor, the one where they did, was basically music. It was American Idol meets Bachelor, and they put the couples together and they had to sing together.
Oh gosh.
And then had people come and judge it. And it's just like,
horrible.
It was a cringe fest, but we like to watch things that are bad because it entertains us.
Mm-hmm. Makes you feel better about not being that cringy.
Not being on that show, yeah. But this show, which I just assumed was gonna be another one of these shows, the premise of the show is they go to a city. So this season, they're in Charlotte, North Carolina. And all these single people apply, and all these single people are like, I wanna get married. I'm ready to get married. And there's a team of experts who are the hosts of the show.
Oh.
And they go through all these people, interview them. I don't know all the process. They narrow it down to these 4 couples that they have out of.
So they've paired people together. And is this over the course of the season, or is this episode 1?
Episode 1 is the selection of the 4 couples.
Okay.
Now let me explain to you. This is how it works, and this is episode 2. Episode 2.
Is this called Naked and Afraid? Because that's how I would describe my honeymoon.
No, but that, yeah.
Just kidding.
That's, you can watch that after. Episode 2 is the wedding.
Of the 4 couples.
And this is, on their wedding day, is the first time they've ever seen each other.
Oh my gosh.
Never, when the bride walks down the aisle, that is the first time that the groom is seeing her.
It just doesn't, I mean, my knee-jerk reaction is that doesn't sound like they have a very high opinion of marriage. It's just like, yeah, let's give this a shot.
That is what I thought going in. And that may still be true, but let me just, it's
just like, oh, this will be fun. We can always just get divorced.
Now,
that's a great way to start a marriage.
Now, hold on. Now, before you judge it, you're judging it hard right now.
I'm judging it, I'm saying this is the assumptions that I'm bringing to it.
Yeah. And that's what makes it so entertaining. Now, the way that the show works is, and this is, if you have a certain view of marriage, you would think that this is wrong. And maybe you fall into this category. And I would probably have fallen into this category before I started watching it. I think differently about it now.
This show has changed what you think about marriage.
Yeah, and I'm gonna explain that. So the way that it works is they're married for 8 weeks. And at the end of 8 weeks, you decide if you're gonna stay married or get divorced. That's the season of television, right? And so I don't know what episode we're on right now, but like the second episode and the third episode.
Cameras are following them.
Honeymoon, like last night we watched the beginning of the honeymoon, and so there's these questions like, are we gonna have sex on the first night? We literally met this afternoon at our wedding. Are we gonna have sex? And then I'm not gonna spoil anything, but there's like, who's gonna have sex, who's not gonna have sex? And it sounds like I'm talking about a trashy show, right?
I would be so afraid to forget my wife's name.
Oh, that's one of that's what happens when they walk down the aisle. They introduce themselves. It's like, I'm Natalie. It's like oh,
it still sounded pretty gross.
You know when they find out their last name? And again, there's it's at least this season, whether in Charlotte, it's all very traditional. It's like 4 couples, heterosexual couples, men and women, and then all the women are taking the husband's last name. So the way that they're like, we now introduce to you Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, and the woman's like, Johnson? Like she's like responding. It's great television. Let me just say it's great television because of that, because you put yourself in this and you're like, what would it be like? Okay, now, I just thought this was gonna be trashy reality TV that I was just gonna be laughing at the whole time. The reason my wife likes to watch it with me is I weep when I watch the show.
What are you talking about?
And I don't mean she'll look over at me and like I've got like tears in my eyes.
Okay.
Like multiple times while watching this show.
You got tears in your eyes?
Well, I got tears because I'm laughing right now. But
I got tears in my eyes.
Yeah, I was making you cry. So
I don't know.
But I've been trying to figure out what's going on. And Jesse, we've been talking about this. And I think there's a number of things. First thing is like
what's going on in your heart?
Yeah, well, like, why am I responding to the show in this way? And so one thing is that it has hit me that these marriages, which are arranged by someone else, are very similar to my marriage. And let me explain what I mean by that. Meaning that when you're young, you don't know what the hell you want. I mean, you don't know what the hell you want when you're old either, but especially when you're young and you're figuring out who you are. Think about how differently I think about literally everything than I did when I was 23, right? 20 years have gone by. I've changed in many different ways that we've talked about on the show. Still married to the same woman who has also changed in similar and different ways.
Yeah.
And there's this idea that, oh, well, you gotta be exactly sure about this person. You gotta know everything there is to know about them. You should probably live with them before you get married because you need to know what kind of habits they have. This show calls that into question, right? And calls into question that it's really about someone who is, the individuals that make up the marriage are ready for the commitment that marriage is, right?
Yeah.
They are prepared to be like, I know you're not perfect. I mean, first of all, one of the things we've been talking about is the process of having experts select your spouse for you is probably at least as reliable as the process of you selecting your spouse for yourself. Let me just say that. That's a premise. That's a working theory that I have.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about we should go back to arranged marriages. I'm just saying that if you wanted to submit yourself to this process, you like to think that, no, I would be better at making this decision because I'm rational, I wanna make sure I'm in love with somebody, whatever your reasons would be. I submit that initial spark that makes you fall in love with somebody, while it is important, it isn't the thing that, and we talked about this before, but it isn't the thing that maintains a 20-year marriage.
Yeah, let's talk more about the commitment component, but I do think that when I was, you know, trying to figure out if I was gonna propose to Christy, if we were meant to be together. You know, I was doing lots of math. I was doing lots of analysis.
Right.
And even when we got engaged, like we went through premarital counseling, which I highly recommend because it can raise flags that could lead to like, you know what, let's turn back now. You know, let's make it as an informed decision as we can about the commitment we wanna make. I feel like some of what these experts that you're describing did, Christy and I tried to do in our premarital counseling. Like we went through this book and it was a workbook. Maybe you went through the same workbook. Can't remember what it was called.
It was like a Tom Nelson.
No, but it was in you mean like a Tom Nelson evangelical publisher?
Yeah, it was like preparing for marriage or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was from a Christian worldview, yeah. But it was very practical. Like it forced, it guided us to talk about things like
sex.
Yeah, like our expectations for sex, but then smaller things like habits, like things that matter to you, small things that are a big deal to you, things that, you know, that can be annoyances, like how you deal with money.
Yeah.
You know, and then putting a plan in place.
That could be points of conflict.
Points of conflict, you put a plan in place. It's like, okay, we hear each other and we agree and we're planning our future, but we're also analyzing, like there is a chance, and it felt very slim, that our counselor who was walking us through this would be like, you know what?
You're not right for
pull the plug, you're not right for each other.
I'm sure some counselors do that, ones who are really bold.
I still think it seems like a really great idea. Like
This television show?
Not the television show.
Because it is great. It is a great idea for a television show.
Premarital certification. I won't even say counseling.
Yeah.
Like some sort of third-party certification. I mean, as my kids get older and they're like, as they start finding partners, I'll be like, can you agree to a third-party certification? I'm making this up right now because I don't like to think about. Maybe they should
just go on this television show.
Okay, yeah, they could just go on there.
Well, okay, I agree. I get what you're saying. I agree with all of it.
I'm interested in the commitment component, but like, tell me what you're learning.
Well, just to finish to add to your thought, to finish your thought.
You finish my thought.
To add to your thought.
Finish him.
I think that, and again, these experts, how qualified are they? I don't know. They got PhDs and shit. But how does that certification process that they are putting these people through compare to the sort of the very small focus group of the two of you and a counselor? How does it compare? And I'm saying that my suspicion early on, now first of all, one of the things is like, who's gonna stay together? Like, right, that's one of the fun things about watching it. And Jesse and I were like, oh, this couple, I think they're gonna be okay. Like we say things like, I think they're gonna be okay. Then this couple, it's like, ooh, like he's really organized and she's not, right? And so you would be like, well, why did they put them together? And you know, sometimes it's a huge problem and sometimes it's not. It really depends. And maybe
the reason why they put them together is because the producers overrode
and that's the thing,
experts.
That's the thing that I talked to Jesse about. I was like,
this is gonna
what
be good.
Do you think, don't you agree that, because I get into the production side of it, I was like, don't you think that they made the people on this television show sign something that said that they understood that one of the criteria for them
casting,
them coming together, putting people together is an entertainment quality, right? Sure, it's in the fine print somewhere. Yes, you will be matched according to your compatibility, but you will also be matched according to entertainment value. So,
and they probably didn't say that. They probably just said with the prerogative of the executive producers.
Right. So it's probably covered. I'm sure they've got that covered, Netflix or whoever makes the show. Now, all that being said, I think the reason that I get teary-eyed, and first of all, there's like one couple that they elicit nothing. I have no sympathy for them. I don't really like either of them.
That's what they sound like they're meant for each other.
And I think I think they have the smallest chance of staying together. But these other three couples, it's like when like the bride walked down the aisle and like the husband saw her, it was like, I find myself in this, I do this at weddings in general. I get kind of teary-eyed at weddings. but I found myself, the first time it happened, I was like, what the hell is happening to me right now? Why am I responding in this way? And I think that it has a lot to do with thinking about those moments in my marriage and the way that like Jesse and I did not know what we were doing.
Yeah.
Like the same sort of like deer in headlights, what have I gotten myself into? Am I ready for this? That is so sensationalized and exaggerated in this show is something that I felt about that whole period of my life of, you know, we got married when we got married because of the culture that we were in. We got, you know, one of the reasons we got married when we got married is because at the time we were abiding by a worldview that said that premarital sex wasn't part of God's plan, right? It's like you wanna have sex, you got to be in a committed marriage, specifically, not just a relationship, but a marriage.
And that had a deep impact on our decision-making abilities.
Exactly. Now, again, I'm saying all this because you may look at this show like you did and like I did before I watched it and said, this is ridiculous. Why would anybody make a decision to get married based on some experts on a television show? And then you start thinking about the reasons that you get married. And I say none of this to say that, I mean, I was madly in love with my wife, still am, was drawn to her. We were compatible. We couldn't stay away from each other. We couldn't imagine not having a life together. All those things were in place. But so much of that was just influenced by the nature of who we were at the time and these cultural pressures and expectations in our worldview, right? But that got us into it, right? But none of that stuff keeps you in it. That stuff that kind of throws you over the threshold, but it doesn't keep you in the room.
But yeah, but they're married. They got married in episode 1, and by episode 8, they're deciding if they're gonna stay together. But really that means is like, we're gonna pretend to be married for 8 weeks.
No, legally binding.
Well, I know, but they've kind of thrown it out the window. They're like, let's play marriage. Let's be married in an experiment for television for 8 weeks, and then we'll decide if we really wanna be married.
But to tie it in with our story, one of the girls on the show, one of the women, she's 27 years old, is a virgin who has saved herself for marriage.
Okay.
So that feels like there's more at stake because she's gonna give up her virginity, which is very important to her, according to her worldview, and then not stay with this guy because after 8 weeks, it seems like maybe it's gonna be a little bit difficult.
Well, I think that is the question.
The fact that she said, okay, again, I'm not making a statement, I'm not promoting the purity culture thing. I'm just saying that the fact that she has saved herself for marriage increases the chances that their marriage will go beyond the 8 weeks because she's given up more.
Did she continue to, did she wait to have sex until, has she waited so far?
They have not consummated yet.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And that supports.
At the point that I'm in.
That supports my assertion that.
They will though. You think they're gonna hold out, she's gonna hold out for 8 weeks? I guarantee you she's gonna do it. She's already basically said that she's going to do it.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Because once she realizes that she wants to have sex with him, she's already married to him.
and according to her worldview,
it's not typically how it happens.
She got the okay as soon as she got married to him.
Yeah.
But she's probably, if she subscribes to that worldview,
I think
she's probably also subscribes to the worldview that she can't get divorced unless there's infidelity. So unless he cheats on her in the next 8 weeks on this television show, which is probably not gonna happen because there's cameras on him the whole time, she's gonna be married to this guy for a long time. And a lot of times that doesn't work out well. I'm just saying, I'm not judging it good or bad. I'm just saying that decision makes it more likely for her to stick around in the marriage room for longer.
All right, but how many of these contestants?
Don't say contestants, man.
Are acting
couples, married couples.
What are they saying about commitment?
Things that make me cry.
Really? So they're like they're sincere. They're not like just tiptoeing around like, hey, this is an experiment. They're not acting the way that I'm saying. They're acting like our lives depend on this relationship.
The reason that I like it is because the people on the show, the reason I feel about it differently, like when I watch The Bachelor or The Bachelorette or The Bachelor in Paradise, which is the trashiest trash.
I've never watched any of these.
Me and Jesse even watched that.
I'm watching Small Wonder reruns.
We watched that Too Hot to Handle that I tweeted about, which was, I mean, the whole point of the show was to be trash. When we watch those shows, I just judge the people, the contestants constantly, and I'm just like, how stupid do you have to be to go on this show? And like, these people don't understand anything about life. These people on Married at First Sight, like, it's a different kind of person. Like, they are taking it very seriously. It isn't like, in other words, when you watch The Bachelor, you're like, how many of these women, and watch The Bachelorette, how many of these men are on this show for clout, so they can become reality TV stars? That you don't get that vibe at all from these. It's like, I did this because I want to be married, because I see myself as a married person. And I haven't had any luck in that in my own life, trying it my way. So now, why don't I let these experts do it for me? And
it's not that I don't believe in, I mean, I don't know what I think about arranged marriages, but I think that, I do think I have this belief, which I haven't thought about or like asserted. I'm just gonna vomit this out and see if I can make sense of it, like everything else I say. I've been like, you know what, I believe that arranged marriages could work just as well as unarranged marriages. Now I don't want to get into like who's arranging it. Like I'm not weighing in on that. But like if you put two people together, if you submit to a process and you're on board for that, and it's by your volition. I think
both people are equally committed, because a lot of times
both people
arranged marriage and marriage in general can be kind of tied into this patriarchal thinking. But so we're talking about in the perfect world,
like, yes, we want to be married. I mean, just like in that show, I have thought in general it could probably work. I think it's part of my experience kind of impacts my opinion in that. Like Christy and I were talking the other day about this a couple, and I know nothing about them. She was like, so and so has announced they're getting a divorce. They're like they're a motivational speaking couple that they talk about relational dynamics, and after like almost 20 years of marriage, they've decided to just be friends. And I'm like, listen, I don't know anything about this, but if you divorce after that long and you just want to be friends, it's like, when you add the detail that they have a public persona of giving marriage advice, and then that makes sense that I'm just saying there's an ulterior motive to maintain a friendship, to prove that like my voice is still valid when it comes to relationships. But that's a hard thing to believe, that like you've been married 20 years and you just get divorced and we're still best friends and we're raising our kids together. It's like, that's freaking complicated. I'm just suspicious, but I know nothing besides what I just said.
I know nothing except the thing my wife said to me offhand, and I've come to a firm conclusion about it.
But I told Christy, tacked onto that conversation, I was like, we've been through so much together, and I can understand being married for 20 years, and I mean, we've changed so much that we could have changed in ways that were so different and divergent that we would get a divorce. Like, but I'm so grateful that we haven't changed in exactly the same ways, and we haven't changed at exactly the same times, but we've gone through so much of it together that we're still very much in it together. And we're on the same page. The book is a big book. I mean, the page, it's not like teetering on a pinhead that you're trying to like to stay on the same page. You don't have to believe the same thing about everything. You don't have to have the same instincts. You don't have to be the same person to make it last. Because Christy and I are not the same person. But we've changed in this, it's in like a dance. There's a give and take, and there's a listening, and there's a sharing, and there's a it's undergirded by this commitment, I guess, that we are in this together. We are together. We are gonna go through this together, and it's gonna, when it's really hard, and it's really, yeah, at times it's really hard.
Well, there was this,
but if you come through it, if you come through each of those things, it makes it, you can go into the next one with that much more confidence.
The next marriage?
The next trial.
If you can figure out the first marriage, what you did wrong, go to the second one. A lot of people do say that. I'll do that in my second marriage. I want to stay here. I know we're staying with this question, but I want to stay here because one of the things, I don't remember the name of the study. I don't know where this was. Jesse told me about it. But there was some relationship expert / psychologist who said that they could look at, they basically set couples down and had them communicate with each other on video. Mm-hmm. And this person could watch like 20 seconds of the video.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I could do that too. And decide if they're gonna stay together?
And make a very accurate prediction as to whether or not they would be together 5 years from now. And I'm not getting the numbers exactly right, but it was like an unbelievably short amount of time of seeing them together could make a very predictable, a very reliable prediction about how long they were gonna stay together.
What would you look for? Because I feel like I could do that.
Well, here's the thing.
I know what I would look for.
That's what this show, that's one of the things you're doing as you watch this show. And I firmly believe that while you could get into some really like analytical, it's a vibe. And now it is based, hold on, because this is important. Because there are things like, me and Jesse have talked about this lately. We've been like, you know how sometimes like you know someone and you get a vibe from them and you can be like, I think this person is duplicitous, or I think that this person, there's something off about this person.
Yeah.
In their character. And you can kind of sense it, but then you're like, but that feels judgmental. I'm not basing that on anything other than just a conversation
Intuition.
I had with them. And me and you have noticed this. And there's been a couple of times when like we've met with someone in like a business capacity, and then we'll come out of a meeting and we'll be like, I don't get a good vibe from that guy. And it might be that, but what I have learned is that whatever is happening when I say that to myself is more reliable than the 2-hour conversation that me and you might have afterwards, trying to rationalize our way into thinking whether or not somebody is worth working with. And that's what I think this psychologist is picking up on, is that the human capacity for processing things in a way that you cannot even articulate is way underappreciated by most people. In other words, the vibe that you get from someone is very often reliable. That doesn't mean you're gonna be wrong sometimes, but I'm just saying that I think that we talked about this because there's the one couple that we don't think, the look on his face when she says something, the look on her face, the physical, just the way that they seem to be connecting. And then there's another couple that is immediately, you're like, they got it, they're gonna be together a long time. I can see the way they interact.
To me, it comes down to, I mean, if you can, and I don't know how long it takes, it varies from person to person, but if you can tell if somebody's like a genuine good person, you know, but if I was trying to be specific about my analysis, to me, something that would be a telltale sign was like being able to quantify humility. Like if I could, you know, if I'm listening in on a conversation and you could tell that they don't seem like they're asserting that they've got it all figured out, or that they're the type of person that can say they're sorry. You know, you gotta be willing to be humble and admit your mistakes to stay in a vibrant relationship. And you know, I think when you've been married, as long as we have, we know. We really know our partners, right? Like I know Christy, I was gonna say inside and out, but then that would have been weird.
Right, well,
but
sort of true.
It's totally true, but I didn't mean it in that way. So get your mind off the magazines. You dirty-minded little boy.
I am just
I
here.
know.
I didn't say anything.
I mean, we know each other. We know everything. We feel like we can predict what the other person would say or think or interact and we know what the other person is capable of as friends. Like people think our friendship is so extraordinary for that reason, but it's like, I feel like that's really a requirement for marriage, for a long-lasting marriage is like, people are like, and I guess that's why people say that about our friendship. It's like, because it's not a marriage and people don't invest that much in friendship, but I think you have to have that in a marriage, but it's such a high standard to really know.
But what I'm seeing in these couples is like literally, okay, they just got married.
But they're not, I mean,
hold on, but they just got married. And then after they get married, the camera follows them as they walk back through everybody. We present to you Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. They walk through everybody and then they go to this they all get married at the same place, someplace in Charlotte.
And then they have their first date.
And then they're just sitting there talking to each other and there's like a bottle of champagne. Like they do it, all the couples have to do it. And it's just like, I looked at the way that these two people interacted with each other in the first moments of ever meeting, and I feel like I can make a reliable prediction. And that's not what the psychologist was doing. So I don't think, I agree with everything that you're saying, that the key to like a continuing marriage is this learning about each other, is communicating. But I'm talking about compatibility that gives you the right runway to be able to establish those things that you're talking about. I feel like it's something that you can just sense in a sixth sense kind of way. Now, there are some people, and this is the case.
I think it's unfair to put it on the first time you meet, especially on television after you've gotten married.
Because there's plenty of, I'm not saying it's 100% right. I'm just saying that there is this, you can sense compatibility pretty quickly. But there's lots of people who get married young, did not realize that they weren't. I mean, just because you're the two eligible people who get married in your small town in the same year doesn't mean that you're compatible, right? Mm-hmm. It's statistics. You just were in the right place at the right time. Then you start trying to figure out, are you actually compatible? And a lot of this, that's where your commitment kind of goes into, like, you've got compatibility and you've got commitment, right? And compatibility on its own cannot keep a marriage together forever. Commitment on its own can. Like, there are people who hate each other, but because they don't believe in divorce, they're just gonna be together forever. I think that the beautiful marriages are the ones in which there is a compatibility, and that compatibility can grow because you change over time. That's coupled with a commitment, that then there are these beautiful moments of like, we actually love each other, have a great time with each other, but that's not always gonna happen because I'm a human, you're a human, I'm gonna be an asshole, you're gonna be an asshole. And in those moments, to get through the asshole moments,
you gotta stay committed.
That's when you gotta have that commitment in place. The only thing I'm saying is how
a commitment to
crazy it was to look at these couples and make a decision about compatibility.
I would add that it's a commitment to a couple of things. It's not just a commitment to staying together. I think it's a commitment to being, it's the reason why there are vows. It's like you commit to the certain things that you're gonna do. You serve and love the other person, place their needs before your needs in sickness and in health. Like that sickness thing, that can get real tough, right?
Yeah.
And that's a huge commitment, and it's a blind commitment. And for most people who haven't, cared for someone who's really been sick. So I think it's a commitment to those things that you're promising, that you're gonna make it work. I'm committed to dancing with you. Sometimes the music is gonna suck. Sometimes our legs are gonna be broken, but we're committed to dancing together through life.
Well,
that's something that it requires constant cooperation and fidelity.
Well, and I think that the thing that is difficult for a lot of couples is, and this should be incorporated into the more traditional vows if it isn't, a commitment to communicate, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that people have a difficult time, and this can be personality based, but you know how sometimes when you're having a difficult moment with someone who's a friend, any relationship, and sometimes what you have to do is you have to have that meta conversation. You have to talk about the way that you talk to each other. Mm-hmm. You have to be like, you have to sit, some couples get to a place where, oh, we're not really communicating, we're not connecting anymore. And we have lost the ability to talk about the fact that we're not connecting anymore. And I think that happens in so many relationships, right? It's like if you stop talking about the nature of your connection, it's gonna be very difficult to get the connection back without first addressing that directly. If you're just focused on the superficial stuff, the specifics of the current argument that you're in, but you haven't gotten to the how do you actually connect and how you communicate, solving this particular problem is not gonna be helpful. It's gonna just kick the can down the road, you know? And I think that's what you were getting at earlier with the marriage counseling is like, what it helps you, having a third party a lot of times, we can have the uncomfortable conversation that we, for some reason, can't have with just the two of us.
Right.
You break through to that
and
plane, it's a different plane.
Not just premarital, but like marriage therapy is very good. You know, sometimes you just have to bring in a third person.
And my therapist is my wife's therapist, which is not necessarily advisable across the board, but in our situation, because a lot of the times what we're doing is we're talking about each other. Mm-hmm. Is like, well, my therapist has the other side of the story. And then occasionally, if there's like an acute issue, we'll both go in together. And that has been helpful.
I think knowing that most relationships, I'm not gonna say all, there's this entropy, right? Of it, okay, you know, this isn't gonna last forever because we're both imperfect people that are prone to selfishness, and we're not the same person.
Yeah.
And there's so many variables, you never know what could be thrown at us as a couple. So then it's just having this mentality like, okay, if that's the tendency, then we have to be vigilant about the threats to our relationship from internal and external. And just know that, okay, we're gonna identify and we're gonna face these threats head on, and not just because we know that that's what's most likely to happen, is that something's gonna sneak up on you. And then a few months you're like, okay, there's a wall that's built up. This is a threat to our marriage long term. It's not just leading to a bad week or a bad month.
Right.
I felt like I had this very heightened commitment. Christy's parents are still together. You know, my parents were, in my experience, were never together. Mm-hmm. And so I just, I had this mentality that like I was gonna stay committed. Like divorce was never an option. And I haven't reassessed all of that mentality. Maybe there's some negative aspects to that, and I think you can lean on that, and it's like, and it minimizes the amount of work that goes into it. You just can't say, well, divorce is not an option, like we've already talked about. That's not how you dance. Just by saying, well, I'm gonna stand here and I'm gonna be here. That's not dancing.
Well, and I think statistically, I you hear this thrown around, but I mean, I don't know if it's true. I don't know what the latest statistics are, but I always heard when I was in the church that the divorce rate inside and outside of the church is about the same. I always found that hard to believe, just because I didn't see as much divorce in the circles that I was in. because it felt like people were more committed because they did have this sort of ideological underpinning that included divorce is not an option. And I do think that there is a dark side to that because a lot of times it ends up being, and I've witnessed this, not with friends, but just with people that we like knew in church, where there would be like, this person is being emotionally, maybe even physically abused.
Sure.
And yet they're staying in this marriage because they have this ideological commitment, and that's, that's for them to figure out.
Or for the kids, or for other reasons, or
Right. But as it applies to us, I think that, because I mean, my parents are still together, Jesse's parents are still together, so I didn't have that same sort of like, well, I'm gonna be different. But I brought the same mentality that you did to the marriage. Is like
it is nice to have it off the table, where it's where you agree from the beginning, from before the beginning of being married, that like divorce under normal circumstances is not an option. It's not. We're not going to use it as a relational escape hatch. It's a last resort.
Yeah, and I do think that there is, again, and this is not
when it comes to relational dynamics.
I'm not judging anybody, and I'm not prescribing anything. I would have a difficult time. Obviously, kids change the picture because now you've got some people who are going to be affected, especially if they're kids that you're currently raising there in the house. But if it's a couple that, again, just like married on this show, which this has become an ad for this show unintentionally, but like, okay, if you believe that getting married and getting divorced on a television show is wrong, then I can't argue with that. I'm not gonna change your mind about that. But if you think that these people came into this on their own volition, then they together made the decision that they weren't compatible. They haven't brought any kids into this yet. And then they make a decision to mutually separate and get divorced, then I'm not gonna be like, well, you have dishonored the institution of marriage by doing that. And I'm also gonna say that if it's somebody, everyone has their own reasons for it. But I think that it's the idea that this isn't just a serious thing. This is a commitment that through all these potential circumstances that we're gonna stay together, because if we don't think like that, we're gonna see a way out, and then in your lowest moments, you might go for the door if you've installed the door. But if you've never installed the door, you're not gonna leave. But you know what? You could decide at a certain point in your relationship together, hey, let's install the door. If you come to that conclusion as a couple, and you're like, I think that we need to seriously consider that maybe we're not supposed to be in a relationship with each other. There was a time in my life when I subscribed to an evangelical worldview where I would be like, that's the devil talking. You can't go there, because now you're talking about building the escape hatch and you're gonna do it. And my perspective on that has changed. It's like, it's not my role to judge other couples and how they go about that, right? But what I can say, speaking from my own experience, is that not building the escape hatch, not putting the door in, has been one of the reasons I can point to for being married for 19 years. For me.
Yeah, and for me too. Yeah, I'm sure that there's people in our position who are saying similar things, and then down the road they get divorced.
Of course.
Even that couple that I was making all these assumptions about because they're public and now they're saying they're friends, and that's just me bringing my assumptions to it. I don't even know their names.
What are their names? Let's say them.
It does get complicated, and I do want to make a commitment to not judge other people. Because it's like, who have been or are going through divorce.
Clear. I think that's clear, because what I hear you and me saying is that if what you have collectively decided to do is this, then there are certain decisions that you can make to help make that reality become a reality, right? That idea become a reality.
But everything that
you've made together decide that you want a different reality.
Yeah, because everything that we've said seems to imply that the that the high road is to stay
married forever.
Married forever.
And I used to think that. And there is something beautiful about it. I'm not gonna argue with that. And I do think there is something beautiful about like overcoming adversity and like just the nature of commitment. But you know what? There's plenty of examples of people who were in a difficult marriage, and not just necessarily one that they needed to get out of for like safety reasons, but just people who mutually discovered that they wanted something different. And now they're each in other beautiful committed relationships. That's a reality as well. And there was a time in my life, again, if you subscribe to a sort of a conservative evangelical worldview, then if you really read certain parts of the Bible in a certain way, then those marriages after divorce are illegitimate marriages.
Yeah,
and I'm glad that I don't have to think that anymore, because the observational, my experience is that no, actually some of those marriages are better and healthier and better for these people and better for the world than the previous marriage.
Yeah,
and I'm not gonna cancel that marriage because I got some ideological commitment.
Yeah, how do you think my mom felt over the years when like culturally we were in an environment where it was like, you can't, you failed.
Right, something is wrong with you.
Twice.
Right.
You're in your third marriage now. It's like, you failed twice.
Yeah.
And that's not what happened.
And in many places, you're not qualified to be in leadership if you're in a relationship like that. Like
so,
you've got this mark on you and you can never recover.
I think we've said everything through the filter of through the lens of we love our wives and they love us, and that's who I want to be with Christy until I die. Because she'll already be dead. No, or until she dies. I just want to cover the bases. Until one of us dies.
It's called
Till
death do us part.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to start like.
They took care of that a long time
dibs
ago.
on the who dies first.
Yeah.
It's
not until I or you die. It's till death do us part.
Yeah, that makes it.
You don't have to think about who dies first.
Yeah.
You just say that.
Because you don't want to have to unravel that.
I told Jessie, she's younger than me. I'm tall. I'm gonna die first. I'm just going with the stats, Tall people don't live that long. Sorry. So she gets very upset when I start talking like that.
So commitment looks different for her than it does for you.
Yeah, I'm like, listen, if things go as according to just like nature, you're gonna have at least a few years to just find a new man. How does that feel?
But yeah, you're joking now. But
she hates when I talk. I love to joke with her about that.
With her about it, yeah.
Because she says things like, well, if I died, how long would it take you to get married?
And
then I say things like, I don't know if I would get married. And then she gets really mad.
Oh, really? Because she wants you to get married? She don't want you to be a philanderer or a playboy or something?
I don't know. I was like, I just haven't thought about it. Cross that bridge if we get there. You know what I'm saying? But like, I don't know. I'm a different person.
Well, I think if you're honest though, I think what you would say, I know what you would say. You'd say, well, I've been watching this show.
I'm gonna go on this show.
And it seems like-
That's season 3 of Married at First Sight, is everyone is a widow or a widow. Ooh, I think I just gave y'all a good idea.
That's gonna get real heavy.
It's the talk about crying while you watch it.
I know.
Now you got to hear all the stories of how their spouse died. Like that's a bad idea.
But as a producer, they have to think about it. They've been talking about it.
Oh yeah. Hopefully a producer of Married at First Sight is listening in.
So we ended up just talking about
marriage.
We talked about marriage, but we were really just talking about our marriages.
I talked about those 4 marriages on that television show as well. I didn't really get into specifics.
So is that your recommendation this week? What's the name of the television show?
No.
Arranged.
I'm gonna give another.
Deranged.
I'm gonna give another recommendation on top of that.
What is the name of the show?
It's Married at First Sight. It's on Netflix. I can only vouch for the most recent season. I don't know what season that is. It might be season 2. I'm only 4 episodes in, but I do have another rec.
Okay.
That goes back to what we were talking about before, which is some of the things that we continue to be dealing with as a society for the betterment of our society. And it's a book that I made it a recommendation in my letter to a white man that I wrote, but I'm gonna talk about it specifically here, and that is I'm Still Here Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. And this book, I'm just gonna read the description here that was made by whoever wrote this particular review, the Hello Sunshine Book Pick, Reese's Book Club. From a leading voice on racial justice, an eye-opening account of growing up Black, Christian, and female that exposes how white America's love affair with diversity so often falls short of its ideals. And I know that you started this book as well, but the general idea of the book is exactly what was just described there, that we can come to this place, and this is something that is happening in the midst of the movement right now, where a bunch of white people can be like, yes, we value diversity, and we believe that is something that should be represented in our circles of friends, in our businesses, in society, in our leadership, in our legislature.
It's the right thing to say, and it's an easy thing to say right now, but it's
and her point is
challenging to enact.
She tells from a very personal perspective what it has been like to be in white spaces as a Black woman, in spaces that said that this is what they valued and maybe even thought that this is what they valued, but didn't understand what that actually meant. It's incredibly challenging. It's incredibly eye-opening. I think it actually, I don't know if it was a New York Times bestseller from the beginning or if it has become a New York Times bestseller in the midst of this movement, but it is a New York Times bestseller because it's 2 years old, but it is really sort of experiencing this new wave of interest because it speaks so directly to the movement that is happening right now. And I think more importantly, or even more importantly for a couple of white dudes like us, is asking the question of what does moving beyond valuing diversity to making diversity and inclusivity and sort of deconstructing this, white is the norm mentality that a lot of us have without even realizing it. What does it take to break that down? What does it take to move beyond that? Because that's the real work that needs to happen. It's not just recognizing the racial injustice, it's doing something about it and having real change. So I'm Still Here by Austin Channing Brown, and it is a pretty easy read. So no excuses for not checking this one out. Wherever you check out books, or you could just buy the book as well. Don't just check it out.
All right, we'll speak at you again next week. And please, as always, contribute to conversation using #Ear Biscuits.
Yes.
To watch more Ear Biscuits, click on the playlist on the right.
To watch the previous episode of Ear Biscuits, click on the playlist to the left.
And don't forget to click on the circular icon to subscribe.
If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Thanks for being your mythical best.